Hey guys, welcome to 2023. Welcome guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Star Wars vs Warhammer 40K episode 17, The Will of the Force by AFanWithTooMuchTime. If you want to check out my previous reactions, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Yes, last week was episode 16. What was it called again? I forgot. It's been a long time. Yes, Unexpected. Jedi Knight Ayla Sakura was fighting against an Inquisitor, a very particular Inquisitor, I should say, very interesting Inquisitor. Azinthus, I think that's how you pronounce it, Azinthais Inquisitor. He is an Inquisitor that embraces, the warp in its entirety. He uses it against his enemies. He uses it for his own, ambitions as well. And it makes him a very powerful opponent for anyone to fight against. And Ayla Sakura, she was at the verge of defeat. She was about to be dissected or, her brain taken out and, put with a piece of this Inquisitor's will or brain matter into her, and essentially she would become a thrall that he would be able to control. So luckily she was saved by her clones, and they tried to push him back. They tried to defeat him with all the manners of weapons at their disposal. Even an airship came in there trying to save the day, but it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. The Inquisitor was extremely powerful, and if he really wanted to, he could have destroyed the airship. He could have killed everyone there. So yes, this particular Inquisitor is a high priority target in my point of view. I've spoken about this 2 weeks back, that he is a very important target that needs to be neutralized as soon as possible. So yeah, hopefully the Jedi and the clones on Axiom are able to deal with this particular Inquisitor as soon as possible. Before doing anything else, this guy needs to go. He is a target. Okay, now we are heading off to the Will of the Force. Alright, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Echo hated this. He ducked, thinking he'd die as he watched one of the lethal, ricocheting projectiles of the enemy snipers bounce off a wall near him.
Okay, before we continue, Echo is with Ahsoka, right? And I forgot which clone commander. It's not Cody. I think it's Rex. Yes, I think it's Rex. And they're on board the Separatist battle cruiser that belonged to Admiral or General Trench, that spider guy. Yeah, they're aboard that vessel. They're trying to deactivate the bomb that's on Axiom. Yes. And they're fighting against the Skitarii and their servitor drones, and a priest, a tech priest. Yes. Okay. I think I've got it.
He breathed out a sigh of relief a moment later when it imploded Boomer's skull instead of his own. The sensation was followed by a wash of shame so intense he nearly stood and offered himself up to death. Instead, his self-loathing grew as he curled up tighter behind the durasteel containers they had set out as cover. The thick things were holding, mostly, but one never knew when that would change.
Wait. Okay, maybe it's Anakin Skywalker, not Ahsoka. No, wait. No. I think I'm right. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to remember, who is with Echo, because it's important. I don't want to be too lost here. It's been a long time.
Worst of all, Echo felt utterly useless, like he was truly a cripple. The first thing he had done when the enemy attack had come was fall back to the last access point, running as fast as he could. He needed to get the lights under control. He needed to make sure they didn't shut down the elevator. Echo had succeeded, but now found himself so far back in the battle that his blaster pistol was all but useless at his range. His cover was also isolated, and the position had clearly been noticed. Likely not devastated by heavier weapons thanks to its proximity to the access point in the wall behind him.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this fan art, if I can say that, made by Kubik Kuratuku, yes. With the clone troops and the blood splattering around, and like this some sort of yellow blood, or is it some sort of plasma shot, went through the shield that clone is holding, and it's affecting him. Yeah, this is terrible. This is terrible for the clones. You can actually see how difficult it is for them. And then, of course, you see Ahsoka fighting against the tech priest there, I think, yes. And one of the clone troops are also being electrocuted. I don't know whether it's from the Skitarii or is it from the priest himself who's electrocuting him. But yeah, it's bad. It's terrible for the clone troops. Ooh.
In normal circumstances, this would have meant switching to his blaster rifle, like Boomer had. The clone grimaced, looking down at his mechanical arm, fitted not with a hand, but a variable access plug. No way to hold the rifle accurately without both hands, not with all these new, horrid body parts to get used to. The unwilling cyborg was basically waiting for death, and couldn't even have the dignity of dying while taking some out himself. Echo spat. "Better to die trying to advance than to die sitting here!" he yelled, more to himself than anything or anyone else. He slapped his own face with his good hand and slid his metal legs back underneath his body. Echo began to rise just as the wall of blast shields walked past the bend and into his view, Rex having reorganized some of the rear guard into reinforcements for the battle. Echo quickly dropped back down, waiting until they reached his position and then falling in behind the second advancing rank. He only made it a few steps, however, before he was yanked back out and behind the boxes by Captain Rex himself. Seething fury flashed hot in Echo's chest, spitting as he looked into his own reflection in Rex's helmet. "Rex, you can't stop me from fighting in this battle!" the clone cyborg said, shrugging his hand off. Rex did not relent, however. "I need you for a different kind of fighting, Echo," said the captain. Echo felt like he might burst, clenching his teeth as his eyes looked straight into his captain's visor. "Listen here, Rex. I'm not a damn astromech droid. I'm a soldier. I was bred to fight, not to plug into sockets."
But you can do both. You can do both, Echo. You can fight, and you can be an astro droid that connects into sockets. So, you're very important. You're very important. Not everyone can do what you can do, especially with accessing into data ports or using anything that's electronical. That's something that only you can do. All the other clones can only shoot their weapons and throw grenades and do, you know, the regular soldier stuff. So you, as a hybrid of a mechanical and an organic being, is very important in this battlefield, or in this battle in this ship, you know, considering that you're fighting against the Skitarii as well, and the tech priest. Someone like you will be very important, I think. So don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself short. I think maybe he's still trying to embrace who he is right now, or he's still, you know, coming to terms with, you know, half of his body becoming this android creature. And yeah, you should just try to see the good in what has happened. Yes. Okay, let me just stop there.
Rex grabbed Echo by the front of his armor and shook him, pinning him briefly against the crates. You were bred to win battles, Echo! You going into this fight won't change much, but this could change everything! Echo glared at his commander. What could? He yelled over the din of death all around them. In response, Rex backed off and unslung something from his back. Initially, Echo had taken it to be a missile launcher, but now he could see that it wasn't a Republic weapon at all. It was one of the satellite dish-tipped weapons of the Imperials. It's locked! We can't make it fire! Rex yelled. These weapons are tearing us apart! I bet they'll do the same to the droidmen if we aim them back in their direction! Echo looked down at the weapon, and then back up at Rex, eyes wide. Captain, he started to say.
You can do it. You can do it. Believe in yourself.
Blasters ain't cutting it, Echo! We have a lift load of these droidmen weapons just sitting behind our lines. More backup is incoming, but I'm aiming to make this competitive before they show up. He shoved the weapon into Echo's arms. Can you do it? Echo looked down at it, seeing an access slot that he was certain he could adapt to. He jacked in, jamming his access plug into the alien's socket. The clone went rigid in response, eyes shimmering gold for several seconds. Echo! Echo! Rex said, snapping his fingers in front of the clone. As if in response, the weapon lit up, a soft keening filling the air around it. Echo blinked. Yeah, okay, I think that will do it, he said. Rex wasted no time, taking the weapon and peeking out from behind their cover. He squeezed the trigger, and was blinded and shocked as the large Imperial gun poured out a beam of horrid light, silently roasting several Imperials before it veered up and away until the clone released the trigger. Rex ducked, slamming his back next to Echo, panting hard. Damn good work, soldier!
Yeah, but what's this image? Oh my gosh. What is this? Oh, it is so disgusting. Was that a servitor or was that a Skitarii just being blown into pieces? I don't know, like, oh gosh, that's just terrible.
He said, slapping the cyborg's shoulder. Echo grinned in spite of himself, feeling an unexpected surge. He had not pulled the trigger, but had turned the weapon back against its masters. Maybe the damn plug arm wasn't so bad after all. Now, Rex added, how many more times do you think you can do that? Ahsoka hated this. She leaned back, the tentacles of her Montrals sore and thrumming as a lance of etheric death burned the air near her head. In response, she thrust her hands forward, pushing with all her might. The clinking, clanking ranks of the droidmen rippled in reaction, but unlike the last time, the disruption only halted their advance for a handful of seconds and no more.
Okay, before we continue, I just want to know about, Ahsoka's tentacles, right? Is it made out of flesh, or is it some sort of horn, like some sort of nail kind of horn kind of thing, or is it made out of hair, that's just clumped up together like that? I'm just trying to understand the texture of the tentacles, because I've seen it many times, like also in The Mandalorian, when she was there, when she had an appearance, and yeah, I've always just wondered, like, what is this tentacle made out of exactly? And, you know, should anyone cut it, or, you know, like, should get like a gunshot onto her tentacle, will it hurt? Is it like an extension of her, you know, nervous system? Like, will she feel it if something happened to them? Yeah, I just need to know about that. It's kind of like a disadvantage, I think. I don't know. Yeah.
Their feet grip the floor panels, either magnetically or by the function of clamps, drills, and other devices. In spite of that, she seized the moment, tossing out her longer lightsaber, defending herself with her Shoto saber while her mind guided the thrown weapon through the ranks of the enemy.
It would appear that the Skitarii and the servitors have adapted to a Jedi's, you know, abilities. Because yeah, she's trying to use the Force, but you know, they're clamping their feet on the ground. So yeah, they're adapting to the battle here, and hopefully Ahsoka can plan something different. Yeah.
The cutting, scything blade of her lightsaber went through half of their densely clustered lines like a honed edge through wheat. The other droidman, however, ducked down just beneath the cutting line of the weapon, honing in on its returning trajectory and opening fire. She felt ice drop into her veins for just a moment, dashing to the left as volleys of lethality which broke the ship around them chased after her. Ahsoka was not even truly fast enough to avoid them, her precognitive abilities combining with a clever application of telepathy in order to save her for the seconds Rex and his clones needed to recover and mount an effective counterstrike. Ahsoka's clothes were smoking by the end of it, and she could feel new burns and odd injuries forming around her.
And remember that, you know, their weapons are devastating. You know, the tech priests of Mars, their weapons are devastating. The type of heat that is able to be produced by these weapons, and also the radiation. You know, it's not just heat, it's also the radiation that comes out of these weapons, have the capability of poisoning the opponent, you know. Should the opponent survive, you know, the heat that comes from the weapon, they'll still have some sort of radiation poisoning coming towards them. So, yeah, it's just bad. It's just really, really bad. And, yeah, hopefully Ahsoka can make it out of this alive.
The results of glancing shots and direct hits she had softened with the Force. She hated this. Ahsoka Tano, former Jedi of the Republic, felt a sensation channeling itself into her, sickening her like a bitter poison. She knew this feeling all too well, and she hated it with every fiber of her being. It was not the sensation of personal combat, of her arms and legs burning, her skin alight with the heat of her superior movements as the Force flared in her, pushed her every living cell to its limit and far beyond. It was not the air of hellish battle, the sense and smell of dying men all around her. The luminous blade she swore to the protection of others, only able to defend herself. Each time she would break to defend her men, the Imperials would notice, punishing the effort intentionally. The Republic had already taken horrendous losses, even as the droid men of the Empire voicelessly suffered their own, eating death without apparent complaint as they dealt it back in spades. And, oddly enough, what she hated was not the looming specter of death, the dancing, cavorting form of the priest.
The priest is dancing? Oh, okay.
He had been cautious, engaging her and then breaking off, jumping behind lines of his men before leaping back to attack from a new angle.
He sounds like a boss that you would fight in a game, you know. The boss has his minions that fight against you, and then after a certain amount of time, the boss comes out and he or she fights you, and then, you know, they have some sort of excuse like to say, I need to recharge, and then he jumps or she jumps away, and then the minions come and fight against you, you know, until the boss recharges his abilities. Yeah, so it's something similar to that, I think.
Each new offensive was bolder and bolder, and now, as he leapt in for his latest assault, Ahsoka had the sense that the priest would try for something decisive. He was faster than her, and stronger as well, his body unnaturally augmented, giving his movements the consistent speed of lightning strikes and his blows the force of a boarding ram. His sparking, crackling staff illuminated the darkness, killing all it struck, tossing clones aside with metal-shattering force. Just one well-placed strike would be all it would take to end her, and Ahsoka knew it well. Yet she kept pace, dodging, evading, her precognition keeping her one step ahead, while her temporary touches of telepathy gave her the edge she needed to attack back. This was her true power, how the Jedi could defeat stronger opponents, both in the time of the Sith and in the present now. The Force was not her tool, it was her ally, and to it, barriers of mind, body, and time were illusions and nothing more. By that grace, she did not fear for her life as she spun in the air like a top, the priest imitating her in the opposite direction, both exchanging a dozen sparking blows over the course of less than a second. They landed, Ahsoka poised, crouching, Shoto held offensively, offhand open as her wayward saber suddenly returned to her. The priest stood opposite her, standing on one foot, stave out before him. He smiled, exulting in the struggle, and she could not help but smirk back, her body pulsing with the beat of battle. No, what she hated about all this was not the fight, not even the reality that only one could walk away from this exchange, if either of them did at all. The bitter taste stung her again. The sense that this was orchestrated, that she was, even now, playing into something larger and unseen. Unseen by her, and by the man before her. She had felt it so many times during the Clone Wars, and now she felt it more strongly than ever.
Yeah, Palpatine is behind all of this, you know? It all began with him ordering the ramming of the Atlas of Steel. So you are right, Ahsoka. Will you find out the truth of, who's really behind all of this? I don't know. Honestly, I just don't know.
Why? Because these people, these invaders, were not invading. At least, that was not their mindset. She tasted of their thoughts, saw horrors flashing in all. At first, hours ago, she had been shocked into near trauma by the things she had begun to see, clutched tightly around the mental holds of these men. Amputations without anesthetics, radiation poisoning treated but not cured, causing deaths that lasted decades. And that was just what they did to each other. She stepped on a man, a droid man, who had fallen behind her as he had reared to strike her with a radiation-bathed blade. Even now, she was forced to fend off the gamma waves coming off the fallen warrior with the Force as she crushed his face with a stomp of her foot, killing him as he began to reach for her.
Ahsoka? Whew. That's so brutal and violent. Her stamping on someone's face? Okay, AFanWithTooMuchTime.
His last thoughts had been of a creature. The being had been purple, beautiful and hideous all at once, with claws like some glistening jeweled crab, and a face made of both demonic and angelic components.
A demon? But, I'm not sure which one, for which Chaos God, but okay, yeah, I think it's a demon though.
She had reached out to the dying Imperial from his past, the last words of the horrid thing as it burnt on his blade, now cruelly mocking him in his final seconds.
I'll get you yet!
It had shrieked.
I'll have you!
And he had believed it. He had mistaken Ahsoka for that thing. To him, there was no difference between the demon in his memory and the warrior who dealt the killing blow. And yet, despite how she wished she could prove them wrong, Ahsoka could give them no mercy because they accepted none and they offered less. Her Shoto's blue blade flickered disturbingly, Ahsoka's eyes darting to it as she brought her main hand saber into the fore of her stance. The priest noticed and charged with a speed that blurred his form, the swing of his staff like the arc of a fan's blade. She kicked back and rolled, feeling the tendrils of icy cold reach out from the impact of the staff on the floor. Lights flickered again and went out, though no one was relying on plain sight at this point. Ahsoka hopped up, feeling a static rush as she evaded the sweeping kick that the priest had rolled into. Acting without hesitation, the Jedi began countering the attack by trying to plant her own booted foot right into the priest's blind face. But more and more she was learning that the bloody bandages covering his eyes are more of an aesthetic than any sign of actual impairment. Still smiling, he bent impossibly, contorting back as he slid forward, his chin just clearing the heel of her kick as they sailed past each other. Ahsoka landed lightly, the priest less so. The Jedi was able to arrest her momentum with the Force, driving back in as if she weighed nothing. By contrast, the priest rebounded off the floor towards the wall, spinning like a top all the while. He kicked from the wall, and then the ceiling, bouncing back in a dizzying display of sparks.
Wow, one is light as a feather, the other one is as heavy as a stone, a rock, Yet still he's able to move with such speed and with such grace. And, she is also keeping up with him, but, this guy, he's terrifying.
Wisps and puffs of ball lightning flickered to life and whirled around his dervishing body like guardian spirits chasing his wake. Ahsoka spun forward, becoming a brilliant corkscrew, gliding past blasts and shots of energy that could have ended her with a touch. The priest wheeled about like the blades of a fan, stave whipping out, blocking and blunting shots, while the ghosts of energy around him absorbed the rest. The two warriors met again at the center of the hallway, a blue lance of light soaring into a spinning blade of energy. Their weapons rebuffed each other in a rain of sparks and luminescence, and Ahsoka once more noticed her sabers, both of them now, flickering and fading from contact with the priest's weapon.
I don't think you should use lightsabers on him then. If there's something going on with your lightsabers, I think you should try a different method. Maybe use the Force and, carry some sharp objects and just throw them at him or something, Because I think he's either absorbing the energy from the kyber crystals inside your lightsaber, or he is deactivating or nullifying, the energy from the kyber crystals. I don't know how is he doing that. I don't know whether I'm correct when I say that, but I think that's what's happening here. Somehow, some way, he is absorbing the energy from the kyber crystals. Yeah.
His own stave was also smoking from the contact, but already the Jedi could see that her opponent was successfully draining her weapons of their power. He apparently knew this as well and pressed the attack, waving his stave wildly. Every swing leading into the next, his dance of death becoming a truly impressive model of efficiency and momentum. She would have admired it had she not been busy surviving it, which was no lean feat. Ahsoka was forced to dodge him more often than not to preserve her lightsabers, and openings appeared only rarely in the cartwheeling form of the priest. She found herself kicking as often as striking with her blue blades, swiftly discovering that going on the offensive was even more dangerous than warding off his attacks.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's time to use the Force to, carry other things, other objects around you and throw them at him. Because your lightsabers are losing power, your own physical attacks are not strong enough to make a dent on him. So I think it's time you start using the Force to carry things, heavy things towards him, and for them to crush him, something like that, or sharp objects. Yeah.
However, Ahsoka was a master duelist in a way that even the Jedi Masters of the Order could never quite capture. Her own master had been Anakin Skywalker, and she had been to the realms of Mortis and beyond. Her experience was wide, her wisdom born of failure that the Jedi avoided as opposed to conquered. This cavorting blue man was but another novel obstacle in her long road. Bit by bit, she began to fall back into an evasive strategy, slowly starting to form a better plan in her mind. As much as it seemed that they were the only two on the battlefield, that was simply not the case, and Ahsoka was not suffering tunnel vision. For minutes more, she dragged the Imperial about, defending and striking, but never dedicating to a true offensive. The tactic began to gradually tire her, and the priest could see that as well. His energy seemed endless, and when Ahsoka faltered, stumbling a step, he pressed, exploding forth with a burst of speed he had been saving for a surprise. Launching himself into the air in a head-over-heels spin, stave out and leading, he sang the litanies of silence in loud fervor as the blow came down. The Jedi managed to leap back and away, the priest's weapon slamming into and denting the metal floor plates with a resounding clang. He nearly spun after her in pursuit, but he suddenly stalled as he was faced with a three-tiered, fully manned clone firing line. She landed behind them, and they opened fire.
Yeah, Rex is back, and probably he has those weapons that the Skitarii were using, and also the servitors. So yeah, he's back, using their weapons against them. Yeah, and it looks like Ahsoka's gonna make it. The Tech Priest, on the other hand, I don't know. We'll see.
Ahsoka watched as the insane priest spun off in another direction, swiping what he could away from himself, the ghostly wisps of ball lightning fading to the last as they absorbed the rest of the attacks. The Imperial landed in the midst of his remaining forces, a cluster of Imperial soldiers who stood, guns out and forming a semicircle against one of the walls. The clones were raining death onto them, and the droid men clustered together, using their bodies to shield the priest. The Jedi was only mildly shocked to see Rex and the others hefting and using the Imperial's own weapons. The 501st were no strangers to that tactic, especially those who fought on Umbara and other extremely alien battlefields. In the end, weapons were weapons, as long as you could fire them. "Hold!" she ordered loudly, and the clones did so, closing in around the surviving Imperials.
Why? Finish the job, Ahsoka. Why are you telling them to hold? Hold for who? Hold for what?
Offering no escape. Ahsoka looked around. Mounds of the dead lay all about them, and it was clear to her that, despite having had the numbers advantage in the fight, it would not have been enough to carry the day on its own. She had Rex and the clever tactics of the clones to thank for that. Just like Jango before them, they were naturally given to using a variety of weapons, though she could see signs that not all who had taken up an Imperial weapon had met with a better fate. The smoking, skeletal remains of several clones who had been attempting to man some kind of heavier weapon attested grimly to that.
You know what I just thought? It's because the clone troops did not pray to the spirits, to the machine spirit in those weapons, and that's why they blew up. The spirits inside those weapons were angry. They were not, consulted first. They were not given the proper rituals first before being used on the battlefield, and they exploded. Yeah, that's the reason.
She had noticed the reversal in the flow of battle far before her opponent had. Thus, Ahsoka had not pursued him with the intention of killing, but simply holding him, minimizing the danger to herself as her clone troopers formed up. The remaining droidmen were no longer firing, standing in a double-ringed circle around their priest, hands out wide, using themselves as human shields for the man at their center.
Okay, Ahsoka, so if you didn't have the intention to kill or to defeat this tech priest and his army, then do you intend to take this guy as a prisoner? Is that your plan? No. These people are dangerous. They will show you no mercy. They would not reciprocate that type of mercy towards you. They would kill you. So rather do the safe, option and just end it. Don't be taking any prisoners here. Or maybe, guys, I'm just bloodthirsty. Maybe I just want to see the Star Wars side and the Warhammer side kill each other until there's nothing left. Maybe I am in the wrong, but from what I've been hearing and seeing from the past episodes, the past 16 episodes of this series, nothing goes well for anyone here trying to become magnanimous, or trying to become this a hero who's going to try and save everyone, or being this person who's going to try and find a solution. I think, like I've said before, we've gone past that after the destruction of the Atlas of Steel. We've gone past that. These guys are committed to this war against the Galactic Republic and the Separatists. They are committed. They are not going to surrender. They are not going to lay down their weapons. They would rather die.
Ahsoka stepped forward, deactivating her flickering sabers. "Surrender! The battle is lost. You will be treated fairly as prisoners of war, but you must surrender," she said to them. The droidmen did not flinch, falter, or show any outward signs of fear. She could feel it. They were ready to die. The priest, however, scowled, his face a mask of self-loathing. He blamed himself, Ahsoka would realize. He mourned his failure and the loss of his faithful. The Jedi grit her teeth. This was what the dark side wanted, what the Sith wanted. War, death without quarter or mercy or negotiation. How could she wage war on the dark side and its hidden hands when war was all that gave it strength? It had to stop, somewhere. We are not monsters. We could kill you all here and now and it would be easier. This does not need to be a slaughter. There can still be honor between foes. Surrender! Please surrender! She almost begged them. The priest oriented his head towards her, almost seeming to consider the offer, though there was a resignation in his features that told Ahsoka that, in his mind, this was simply not an option. That the more tempting she made it, the less of an option it was. He opened his mouth to refuse her, but Ahsoka, knowing too well what would come after, preempted him. "Rex, set blasters to stun and take them," she ordered. The clones obeyed her instantly, loosing wide rings of stunning energy which caught and dropped the droidmen in waves. Still, their meat shield served its purpose, and bought the priest time to leap out from the crossfire before it could reach him. He spun, howling in fury, bounding off the ceiling and towards Ahsoka. The attack was futile, however, as he could not avoid the many wide rings which walled off the approach to her. He fell towards her in a tumble, Ahsoka spinning on her heel and kicking the Electro Priest firmly in the jaw, using his own considerable momentum to knock the augmented man unconscious and sending him sprawling. Ahsoka lowered her leg and looked around the room, seeing the other droidmen going down, some taking multiple shots before becoming inert. "Find them. And for the droidmen, have the medics disconnect their arms and legs, if they are artificial. We don't know how much of themselves they've turned into weapons, but we don't want any nasty surprises. Be quick with the stun blast, but don't kill any of them," Ahsoka said to Rex.
Do you think that only their arms and legs are weapons? Ahsoka. I like you. I like you, Ahsoka. I like what you're doing here. I may not agree with it, giving them peace like this or giving them a chance to surrender. The tech priest even tried to attack you, even after you've given that ultimatum, He was prepared to fight against you till the bitter end. So, even if you put him into chains and you try to take him away, I just don't see how is this going to work into your favor, in trying to find peace. I just don't see it. These guys are going to fight until the bitter end.
"Right, Commander," he said, issuing orders to do as she had instructed to his men. Meanwhile, Ahsoka strode up to where the priest lay, activating her main hand lightsaber and snipping off the cord which connected his power-draining stave to the cybernetics embedded into his back and waist. The hum of the staff died, and she cautiously kicked it away. Soon, the priest was bound, the advance team reporting back that the bridge was vacant and now under their control, and Echo was sent ahead on his way to search the bridge systems for the bomb's control program. Not all was going well, however, and the medics were finding it hard to disable just the limbs of the droidmen, all of which had been replaced by various lethal cybernetics. When confronted with the issue, Ahsoka sighed heavily and handed over her Shoto to the leading combat medic. Face drawn, she warned him. Take this and use it when you have no choice. But be careful. I just want them helpless, not to cripple them further. Make sure you don't damage them so badly we can't replace their cybernetics with our own. This is meant to be mercy, trooper, not a dissection. Having gotten his word to obey, she turned to the waking Imperial priest. Rex stood nearby, eyeing the dangerous man with obvious distrust and apprehension. Ahsoka knew how he felt, but she was dedicated to not falling to their level, at least not as much as she could help it. She flinched as she heard her Shoto activate behind her, and began to speak. I'm going to escort this one back to one of the boarding pods. I'd like to ship him out to Coruscant with some of our own ahead of anything else, she said. Rex nodded slowly. He is one of their leaders. I can see why you would want that.
No. Don't take him back to Coruscant. Take him to like a military, off-site base. Why are you taking him straight to the capital? Why are you doing that? Why? No, Ahsoka. Hey.
Want me to come with you? He asked. Ahsoka thought for a moment, but shook her head. I'll meet you back on the bridge once I'm done with this. Keep me updated, she said, walking towards the man, 8 troopers forming up on her right and left. The blue-skinned priest was sitting against the wall, hands bound by several binder cuffs behind his back. Sightlessly, he glared in her vague direction, grinding his teeth audibly. Come on, you, she said to him. The man ignored her, simply grinding his teeth louder. Ahsoka sighed and looked to the trooper to her right, raising her eyebrows twice and gesturing towards the priest with her chin. In response, 2 clones walked forward, taking either side of the Imperial and hoisting him up to his feet by his arms. Ahsoka watched and was glad to see that he chose to stand on his own, grateful that they would not have to carry him all the way back to the pod. All right, let's go.
I would have been that petty. I wouldn't have stood up. I would have been like, you know what? If you want me to go, take me, carry me there. I am not standing. I'm going to be sitting right here. I'm going to lie on the floor. I'm not going anywhere. If you want me to go there, carry me there. That's what I would have done,
she said. Current 82 Velen hated this. His electro leash stave.
Oh, okay, wait, hold on. Where's my... Okay. What was his name? Velen? Or Valen? C82. Okay.
Had been discarded, likely destroyed by the blasphemers, and his Skitarii guard had been taken prisoner, an offense for which few higher shames could exist. And he was the fool at fault for it all. He had been pulled between doctrines, and alas, his hesitation had cost them everything. He was a proud Fulgurite priest of the motive force, and it was his sacred duty, above all things, to waste not the gifts of the Omnissiah, the machine god, and above even them, the life-giving motive force itself. Nothing moved that was not willed to movement by the divinity and grace of the motive force, and to kill its animations, even when in the forms of daemons or xenos, was nearly heretical. That was why he tore the life from them, preserving as much as possible and giving them blessed deaths, returning their animating energies to places better suited to serve the will of the Trinity.
The motive force. Okay. That's a new term for me. I've never heard of it. And it seems like he doesn't necessarily kill people. He takes their essence and he uses it for another purpose. But essentially, the physical body where that essence belonged to is dead. He's just taking out the energy from that body and using it for other purposes. I think that's, hopefully I understood it the right way, how AFanWithTooMuchTime was explaining it. But, interesting. Okay.
Yet he had pursued the Xenos witchling with such fervor that he had been rendered blind to the evolving situation around him. The enemy replica had begun to loot the honored dead, somehow taking up the weapons of the fallen Skitarii and turning them against his own forces. This, combined with their frustratingly competent combat doctrines and their higher numbers, had ensured his loss, and the Witchling had played to it, fighting a defensive battle until his forces were so badly outnumbered that all she need do was hide behind her stolen guns. But it would not have been so had it not been for his blindness. Too narrow was his view, and now he paid a price he had never imagined he'd ever have to face. He was chained, his hands cuffed behind his back, marching between a formation of 4 replicae, the Jedi walking before him. But C82 was far from helpless. Just as his short-sightedness had been his undoing, so would their ignorance be theirs. While his stave was severed, his body retained the reaped energies he had harvested from the battle beforehand, and he was brimming with it even now. C82 was a living weapon, and the key to his salvation would be dependent on knowing when and where to trigger his power.
You see? You see? Now imagine you're taking this guy all the way back to Coruscant. Who knows what kind of chaos he's going to, create at the capital. Ahsoka. Okay, let's just see where this leads out.
For the moment, he had to wait, traveling as their prisoner back down the ragged hallways of the ship. Far too many of the replicae lingered nearby. Any sounds of combat would draw them quickly, and without further war gear, his capacity and variety of deadly applications of energy were greatly limited. He had to wait until he was sure help would not come, or not come in time. "Can you speak?" asked the Witchling. C82 would not have believed she was speaking to him, but she was clearly speaking Low Gothic, or some variant. It was highly accented, but no more than that spoken on Lyrak or Treason's Folly, he considered. On the one hand, it could be seen as a sinful waste of energy, no matter how small, to converse with a Xenos. However, this was certainly a night of Jedi, and being that it was, the potential to gain intel was massive. Oftentimes, interrogators let slip more than they had intended their enemy to know, always suspecting that their prisoners would remain prisoners indefinitely.
Yeah, that might work with other interrogators, but I don't think it will work with Jedi, Jedi are very mentally focused when it comes to stuff like this. They're not really easily persuaded into suggestions, They don't fall into those traps. They're the ones who usually make those traps. They're the ones who are usually the ones who are making those traps for people who are not, in tune with the Force. So it's not going to work with Ahsoka. Yeah.
"I can," he said cautiously. "Then tell me something," she said without missing a beat. "Are you actually a human?" The question was amusing. After a brief shock at the audacity of it, C82 mused that, from an exterior point of view, especially one coming from a region where humans existed largely as clones, that the divergences in his appearance from the baseline of humanity could be extreme enough to warrant scrutiny. "I am, but I will not answer your questions unless you answer mine as well," he said. Ahsoka shrugged in response. "Ask whatever you like," she said almost dismissively. "How many Jedi are within the Republic?" asked C82. Ahsoka laughed at the question and shrugged again. "Somewhere between 1,000 and 1,000,000, she said. He memorized that, monitoring her electrostatic field with his senses, and, so far as he could tell, detecting no changes that signaled that she was lying to him.
Like I said, you won't be able to catch them out with that, They are the ones who are usually creating these traps where people fall into. You can't do it on them, They are the master manipulators with the Force.
The data was vague and dubious, but it was a start. He said nothing after that, waiting for her, and the alien seemed shocked that he had not complained about his answer. "Are you an actual religious priest?" she asked next. "I am," he responded.
Who do the Jedi serve?
He asked right back. Ahsoka put her hands behind her head as she considered this, looking up at the passing ceiling lights for a time before answering. Well, I guess there are two answers to that. The answer that is true and the answer that is real, she said.
Explain,
he demanded. Ahsoka sighed, taking a moment to organize her thoughts. Well, the true answer is that the Jedi Order acts to serve the will of the Force. The Force is like a sentient energy field that moves through us, between us, and gives all things that breathe life, she started to say.
Yes, the warp. We understand that you believe this already. But what is the real answer?
C82 cut in. He was less than interested in humoring her blasphemous beliefs. All he needed was to know what was true. From the way she spoke, she sounded as if she meant that the Jedi should serve the will of the warp. But who did they really serve in its place? Well, the real answer is that the Jedi serve the Republic, the Supreme Chancellor more precisely. Commander, do you really think it's wise to tell him so much? Asked one of the troopers beside her.
Well, she hasn't really said anything. You know, I mean, what is he going to do with this information? Basically, they already know that the Jedi serve, or they are, they follow the will of the Force, and they know that there is a government structure that the Jedi follow, and the clone troops also follow. So it's nothing really serious that she's been telling C82. Yeah. And, the numbers of how many Jedi there are, she kept it very vague. So, yeah, there's nothing to worry about so far.
She shrugged at him, evidently unconcerned. I don't think I've told him anything you can't find on the HoloNet already. Besides, we'd all benefit from understanding each other a bit better, she said. That seemed to placate the replique, and a moment later the witchling continued. So, what are you a priest of? She asked.
I am a priest of the Fulgurite Order of the Divine Motive Force,
said C82.
Okay. I still don't know. I don't know what that means, but okay.
Where is your capital located?
He started to ask. Wait, Ahsoka said, cutting him off and turning around, now walking backwards as she looked at him. You haven't answered my question yet, she said, crossing her arms.
I did,
the priest said. You said you are a priest of the Fulgurite Order of the Divine Motive Force, correct? She asked him. He nodded his head in response. Was this Xenos an imbecile? Could she not hear the answer she had just spoken?
No, we understood clearly. We just don't understand what does that mean. What do you mean?
She shrugged and frowned, seemingly extremely unimpressed with his answer. You may as well have said you are the priest of the Dancing Order of the Divine Nonsense, because none of those words meant anything to me. What in the galaxy is the motive force? Why is there an order for it? And does any of that have anything to do with why you are blue? She said, turning back around with a sigh. Well, whatever. Ask your question, I suppose. She mumbled a moment.
No, I want to know. Answer the questions, C82. Answer the questions.
Later. C82 remained silent for a moment. He knew he should just press on. Just ask his question and continue to chip away intel from her responses. He knew that if he even began the fruitless task of explaining his beliefs to a Xenos witchling, he would spend the rest of their time speaking and hearing little or nothing. He knew this. And yet...
To understand, witchling, you must listen and listen closely. I shall not repeat myself. I shall not tolerate interruption, and I will not stomach blasphemy. Do you understand?
He said through clenched teeth. She spun back to face him, to his surprise, arms less tightly crossed as she raised an eyebrow in his direction, walking backwards once more. Fine, she said. You have my full attention, imp. Gnashing his teeth, C82 took in a deep breath and began to speak.
In the beginning of all things, at the start of all worlds, there was but one force. The motive force. And from its generosity sprang the well of all life, blessed and foul.
This kind of sounds like, the Force. Your guys' religions are the same, It's just that with you, or should I say on your side of the motive force, as you call it, it's blasphemy to, kill the essence that dwells within inside a particular creature or an existence. It is blasphemy to kill that essence. So you guys extract that essence and use it for other purposes, while the body or the structure that it belonged to, is thrown out. So I guess that's a bit different from how the Jedi would perceive things. I don't know. But yeah, essentially, it's the same thing. With the Star Wars side, they say the Force is the thing that binds us, that penetrates us, that has been there since the beginning of time, And on your side, also pretty much the same thing. And also, adding in that it creates the good and the evil, just like with the Force. So yeah, it's the same thing. So they're not heretics. They should not be heretics in your eyes, C82. They follow the same ethos that you do, or religion. Yeah.
So that's why you hate droids? But it couldn't have been as bad as you're describing, said Ahsoka, aghast at the last description the priest had detailed.
Oh, but it was! It was and worse! Worlds were shattered as mere collateral damage. Such were the inhumanities wrought by the abominations of man's hubris. From our networks, our structures which had stood to shade us from cruel reality, we were forced to tear free those most essential components, and thus free ourselves from the Armageddon we nearly unleashed once before.
She nodded, absorbing the information. Wait, what's an Armageddon? She asked. The priest paused and considered the question.
You don't know? Oh, okay.
Armageddon was a very Terran word.
It means doomsday, the end of all things. I think the root of the word comes from a location on the earth,
he said. She chuckled at that, having tried and failed to suppress it.
You find doomsday amusing, Xenos?
C82 asked, raising his own electude eyebrow in response. No, it's just... your homeworld's name is Dirt. I mean, is that just me misunderstanding the translation?
Hey, Ahsoka. No. Earth is a respectable, humble, name to call your homeworld, We come from this earth. We come from this dirt, as you would call it. We feed ourselves from this dirt. We would be nothing without this dirt. So it's a very powerful name for a planet. It has a very powerful statement behind it. Because we all come from this dirt. And we will be buried in this dirt. Yeah. It's very important. Very powerful. Don't laugh at it.
She asked. If C82 could blush, he would have.
It is a humble name! We are a humble people!
He said in indignant protest. Well, not you. Your adopted homeworld is Mars. What's that named after? She asked. C82 raised his chin in pride of his distant red Oath world.
Mars was the name of an ancient and powerful war deity of the old Earth.
The peoples of antiquity would look up into the sky and see a red star glowing there. They named it for their war god, believing it to be his red eye looking hungrily down upon them. In truth, it was our world, he said. Humble people indeed, Ahsoka muttered. Did you just mock me, Xenos? He asked. No, not at all. So you were speaking of how mankind managed to survive that and go on without the help of your technology, she said to him. No, not without our technology, Xeno. Our technology is an extension of us. It is as much a part of our race as our blood and bones. We cut away the cancer of abominable intelligence only, and learn to adapt our technology for use without it. We paid a great price in this transaction, but we had hoped that at the end of that long road we would find peace, he said, voice ending on a sorrowful note.
There is no peace. There is only war. There is only a continuation, a perpetuation, in perpetuity of just war, in the Warhammer 40K galaxy. Even if humanity found peace within themselves, even after all that they've gone through, and they were able to reconcile with themselves and become what they used to be during the times of the golden age of technology, still the rest of the galaxy would be very hostile to them. There's still other xeno threats out there that would want to destroy humanity. So yeah, there was just never going to be any peace. Not in that galaxy.
What happened? Ahsoka asked after a few moments had drifted by. Did you find it? Peace, I mean. The old priest sighed, and with it he suddenly felt so heavy. He could feel, for the first time in his entire life, the grafts in his skin, the metal, the silver, and the copper woven through his bones. He was a testament to what they had found. No, he said bitterly. We found that in the grim darkness of our greatest folly, only war awaited us. Only ever war. Ahsoka was silent then, and in that silence, the priest became aware of something, heard something. A soft chirping, an audible data stream of binaric chant. Magos, extraction attempt is imminent. Prepare for rescue.
Party's over.
He felt his heart suddenly begin to increase in pace, tingling cascading through his many augmentations. His bones ached with the vibrations of the energy he stored even then within himself, and prepared silently to release them. His time had come. None of the 8 clones, nor Jedi who was watching him, seemed to hear or understand what the noise was, likely taking it as nothing more than static damage from some distant part of the ship. The Jedi, who had identified herself to him as Ahsoka Tano during their discussion, seemed lost in thought, still absorbing his words. She had listened patiently, and perhaps in the end he had told her more than he had intended. But C82 was a preacher of his faith, and he could not help but spread the word of the Trinity. Few things were as important. And he had to admit, he had found what he felt to be an oddly receptive mind in her. So what came next would be a shame indeed. He prepared himself, waiting for that moment, the very instant that Ahsoka's connection to the warp would begin to warn of the incoming danger. Her chin tipped up, electrostatic field flaring as she began to prepare for action. In response, he released a heinously large discharge of power, frying the 4 clones around him, destroying the binder cuffs that held his wrists, and blowing the Jedi away in a cloud of smoke and sparks. The other clones were turning even before Ahsoka's body had crunched against the nearby wall, aiming their Republic blaster rifles and looted Imperial weapons towards him. He activated his Voltgeist power field, watching his spectral host of ball lightning rise up around him, absorbing the weapon's fire for the second and a half he needed. In that time, a new combatant slithered out from one of the maintenance shafts, its serpentine body hitting the ground heavily before lurching into rapid action. The Silax-class battle robot looked like a mix between a mythological hydra and a seething swarm of mechadendrites.
Okay. What is it? Silax? Okay. Silax. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this. Hopefully I'm spelling it correctly here. Okay, battle robot. Alright. Silax.
The skull which housed its primary sensor nodules reared up from the swarm of serpent-like tendrils of steel, taking only a fraction of a second to process the enemies near it before lunging into them. It slithered and slipped between the firing clones, so smooth and fluid in its motions that it had already turned 2 troopers into flensed piles of meat and armor, before those which remained realized they were under attack, and by then it was too late. The harsh bark of a bolter firing answered their sudden returning fire, the battle robot evading 2 shots and eating 5 more. The Silax sustained the fire without any visible damage as it blew the clones apart like a child shooting water balloons with a dart gun.
This kind of reminds me of the Sentinels from the Matrix movies, you know. Also that animation Matrix movie, I forgot what they called it again. Animatrix, I think that's what it was called. And how they depicted the Sentinels in that movie as well. You know, how humanity were just ripped apart, mutilated, destroyed, utterly destroyed by the Sentinels, and then they experimented on the bodies, you know, trying to figure out how to make humans into these organic batteries, you know, to power their civilization for all eternity. So yeah, this Silax battle robot is reminding me of those Sentinels from the Animatrix movie and also the Matrix movies. Yeah, chilling.
In moments, they were all, to the last, dead as the steel beneath them. C82 deactivated his defensive field, preserving what power he had left, and eyed the slithering mass of inhuman death that now watched him from its side of the hallway 4 meters away. He felt an unease even though Witchling had been unable to menace him with fill the air, clenching his fists in reaction to it. It wasn't until Magos Letherin kicked open another maintenance hatch and rolled out himself that C82 began to relax again. The member of the Legio Cybernetica had been the reason for C82's final stand at the turbolift, having bought him time to escape without the notice of the Republic. C82 had not expected that he would still be on board, much less that he would try to rescue the Electro Priest, but he was nonetheless grateful for the assistance. The Blue Priest was, however, not happy that his rescue had been facilitated by the near-tech heresy that was the Celiax battle robot. Even then, he could feel the machine regarding him with its tilted skull, calculating, predicting, thinking.
Wait, is the Silax battle robot not a servitor of some sort? Or does it not have, you know, some sort of human biological input in it? Is it like a fully autonomous AI creation? And isn't that, you know, heresy to create technology that way? I'm not sure I understand, you know, the existence of this battle robot. What is it exactly? You know?
But for today, at least, it was on their side. Its master hauled himself out onto the hallway, wrestling with the control rig he wore. The device rested heavily and cumbersome over his shoulders, holding a large panel composed of uncountable keys and dials in bizarre assortments before his torso. From his waist, 2 fat black hose-style mechadendrites extended, each ending in large metallic clamps. He dusted himself off, grunting with the effort, before looking up in C82's direction. "Magos Current 82!" greeted the other tech priest, speaking in a cheerful stream of binaric chant. "We are blessed by the Lord of Logic that you have survived and been returned."
I forgot that they don't actually, speak to each other in a way that us organics would understand. They're speaking to each other at the speed of light using this sort of, linguistic code messaging. I'm not sure how to explain it, but yeah, that's how they're talking to each other. So, from our perspective, all we will be hearing is something like that. Yeah, so it's kind of funny.
He said. C82 nodded, agreeing that the Omnissiah had indeed smiled on him, and not only him, it seemed. Ahsoka Tano, smoking and crumpled against the wall, groaned softly, eyes slowly regaining their focus. The celiacs oriented towards her and chittered in its own chant.
Enemy survivor located. Proceed with EXE.NOQUARTER.
Execute! The first Magos began to say.
Hold!
C82 interjected. Lethrin seemed shocked by the order, but shrugged and nodded his head.
Proceed.
Droned the celiacs. Denied, said Lethrin, watching with no small interest as C82 approached the collapsed witchling, but keeping his distance.
Ahsoka, do you still think it was a good idea to keep this guy alive? Was it still a good idea? I don't know how you're gonna make it out of this alive, but I don't want to say I told you so. So that's where I'll stop. Yeah.
She coughed out puffs of smoke, rising into a sitting position against the wall. Her left arm was broken in many places, but somehow she had used the warp to protect herself from the majority of his discharge. Still, as the priest kneeled in front of her, he could see that the Jedi's nervous system was in shock. And while he was loath to underestimate psychers, he did not expect that Commander Tano had much fight left in her. As if to answer his suspicions directly, her saber flew up from the ground near them, landing in her good hand and activating. She swept it up with a pained shout, fury and defiance burning in her eyes. C82 did not dodge, instead grasping the blade with the sparking touch of his Elect-2s, draining the energy away with his bare hand and shattering the blade. The lightsaber's energy cell burst, burning Ahsoka's hand and causing her to hiss and drop the handle. C82 did not see with his eyes any longer, but he made an effort to orient his head towards her, seeing the flickering, unstable field of her life force before him.
And do you think he's going to, capture you now and take you as a prisoner, like how you were trying to do with him? This guy's gonna kill you.
The currents and divine energies of the motive force were not meant to be wasted, but of the 3 divinities, the motive force was always the most generous.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. Yes, he's not going to kill you. He's going to take out your essence. But essentially you're still dead. But yeah.
He reached forward and wrapped his hands around Ahsoka's face, holding her as if he were prepared to perform a baptism. She glared at him, good arm reaching up and seizing his bicep, but her strength was childish now, and certainly no impairment to his.
It didn't have to be like this.
Ahsoka panted through grit teeth. C82 pressed his copper against her skin, feeling her shiver at the cold there. The priest did not wish to cause pain, not to a relatively honorable opponent. So he made sure that he had a firm grip on her, that there would be no breaks in the circuit he was forming.
I tried to make it different.
She groaned, a sheen of tears glossing the edges of her eyes.
You did,
he said to her. He didn't know precisely why, but he did believe her. She wasn't begging for her life, she was begging for peace, for a chance at peace. But hadn't he explained it to her already? Couldn't she see?
But there is only war, Ahsoka Tano. Only ever war,
he said to her, surprising himself with how heavily that statement weighed on him. She released his arm then, letting her own fall limply with a pained sigh. He could not actually see her pupils, but he knew there was no resignation there. She was only glaring at him all the harder. The unstable energy of her electrostatic field was fading. Her body was starting to go into critical shock.
If that is the will of the motive force, then do it. Prove yourself right.
The words were like a slap in the face.
The will of the motive force? The will of the motive force? Is it truly your deepest desire to strike at me as your last act, Ahsoka Tano? Here I see you with honor, and yet you tarnish that with your blasphemies,
he said. She did not relent despite her anger.
You are a priest,
she growled.
You preach one truth and act out another. You said that your largest concern is to execute the will of the Force,
she gasped angrily.
So do its will. Show me why there is only war.
He grit his teeth now, squeezing her face painfully between his hands. He'd kill her for this. He'd kill her painfully for saying such blasphemies.
Rex, come save her life, please.
He relaxed his grip on her.
Ahsoka Tano,
he said, voice suddenly calm.
Why did you spare my life?
He asked.
Because I wanted peace.
She groaned, her voice losing its strength.
Why?
He asked.
Because it is the will of the sane. The reason I fight,
she said, eyelids drooping, consciousness fading.
Because it is the will of the Force,
she breathed. And with those words, it all began to fall into place. The Jedi had a low, almost non-existent record of mutation. All autopsies had shown this already. Their techniques were also tame, almost entirely based on telepathy and the exertion of force. A force Ahsoka had described to him as a force which gave rise to all life. A sentient energy field which put the universe into motion. The revelation struck him, and with it a certainty of purpose, where before there had been naught but vagaries. Ahsoka Tano was right. She was right. The Jedi did not serve the warp, they were meant to serve the motive force. They were brought into conflict with himself by serving the Republic in its stead, but not she. He activated his Electoos, connecting her flow of life to his own, and moved energy back through, making her body convulse, making her scream in pain as he restored her to stability. What are you doing? She yelled, clutching his arm again, her strength noticeably more present than before.
Yeah, he's giving you a chance because, he's come to that realization that, you guys are one and the same, if I can say it like that. You gave him a chance, he's giving you a chance. Still, this would have all been avoided if you had killed him the first time. But, like I said before, maybe I'm bloodthirsty. Yeah, let's listen what he has to say.
Doing the will of the motive force,
He said, releasing her and standing.
Your beliefs are misguided. Your blood is impure. Your republic is false.
He said, his voice implacable and harsh.
But your intentions are pure. Your image is close to our own. And the force, the true force, the motive force, has plans for you yet. But know this, Ahsoka Tano. The mercy I show you today is a mercy shared between the faithful and the honorable. Do not expect it to be shared beyond us. Not unless the will of the motive force is done, and it is peace. Abandon your republic, or the next time we meet, you shall face no quarter.
The blue-skinned priest turned then, walking back towards his compatriot. Ahsoka followed him with wide eyes the entire way. Lethern did as well.
When he says abandon the Republic, what does he think is going to happen to her and to the rest of, Xeno kind in the Star Wars galaxy? Because he is not the commanding officer of, Battlefleet Zektek or, part of the Crimson Razors. He's not the leader. The chapter masters of those respective groupings, like the Skywatch, he's not going to falter. He's going to continue until this entire galaxy is purged of all potential threats, of all Xeno threats, and there's also the ecclesiarchy that is also going to further this initiative of cleansing this galaxy of all the heretics, the Xenos, and the mutants, So where will she go if she abandons the Republic? It's not the perfect. She's not in a perfect world where she can choose. Okay, I'm not gonna side with the Galactic Republic. I'm gonna go it alone, and I'm gonna try and find peace alone. There's just no way of that happening. There's no way of that happening. There's two camps now. If you try to make a third camp, you'll be crushed. You will be crushed. So she has no choice. She has to stay with the Galactic Republic. She has to stay with the Jedi and try and figure out a way to make them see it her way. Yeah. So when he says abandon the Republic, I don't understand what does he mean by that, I don't understand what you mean by that.
By the great years, have you completely lost all your sense? The other priest hissed to him when he came nearer.
Moral violation detected. Proceed with EXE PURGERETECNOW protocol.
Droned the hateful machine.
My logic is sound, Lethern,
said C82, passing them both and leading the way down the corridor. The Electro Priest knew it would only be a matter of minutes, maybe seconds, before more replicae arrived. Reluctantly, Lethern followed, the Silax behind him. Then explain it! Lethern called after him.
Execute
Repeated the robot in his wake.
It is simple genetics, Lethrin. This Xenos displays a powerful variety of general weaknesses expressed through excuses of honor and faith. It is quite convincing, and she is likely to retain her position following this event,
said the Blue Priest as he ran. The other two were having a great deal of trouble keeping up.
So what?
Called the other.
Execute EXEPURETICNOW.
The Silax started to say again.
No, denied! Shut up for a moment!
Lethrin screeched at it.
If we kill all the weakest generals at first opportunity, we will strengthen the enemy. They have an entire galaxy to pull from and no shortage of troops. By sparing certain elements, however,
said C82. Lethrin's gray face slackened from the anger that had held it before, a false understanding dawning on him.
Oh, I see. We effectively breed weakness into the command, and we can mask it as beneficence.
Okay. Yeah.
Like reverse eugenics on a political model. Oh, I do like that current. It is deliciously insidious. I only wish I had been told ahead of time. I'm due for a cardiac reconstructing, and the excitement is hardly what the Medicaid called for.
The man called back. C82, however, had ceased to listen the moment he was sure that the other priest had been placated. Many thoughts were opening up within his mind. This was truly a different galaxy, and certain things were becoming clear now. Chaos, the forces of insanity, had not yet reached this place, or at least not in any kind of profusion. What's more, it was clear to him now, from the human shape of the many Xenos he had already encountered, and the human natives of these worlds, that the motive force had enacted a powerful design in this galaxy. He could not yet see it all. The pieces were still coming together, but what was clear now more than ever was that things were possible in this existence that had not been possible within the previous one. And the possibilities now began to course through him like the holy energy of the motive force itself. He had been shown his sin in this battle, a sin of blindness, a sin of sightlessness, of short-sightedness. Now he began his repentance. Now he began to see.
Okay, alright, before AFanWithTooMuchTime speaks to us, let me just say that this was Star Wars versus Warhammer, Warhammer 40K, episode 17, The Will of the Force by AFanWithTooMuchTime. Yeah, this episode was interesting. It didn't really go the way I thought it would, especially with Ahsoka. I understand that she wants to find peace and she wants to find the answers about, who is orchestrating all of this behind the scenes. I understand all of that. But, like I've said before, with what happened with the Atlas of Steel, the Warhammer side, the Imperium of Man side, they are dead set on what they want to do. They are dead set. They want to make sure that there is living space, that there is security for, humanity that is aboard Battlefield Zektek, as well as, what was the fleet called that the Crimson Razors are on? I forgot the name of the fleet. But yes, they're trying to secure space for the Imperium of Man to exist in this galaxy now, and they don't have the time, or they don't have the interest to entertain any sort of peaceful discussions or trying to understand each other. They are hell-bent on burning, destroying as much as possible, clearing out as much of the galaxy as possible to make sure that there is living space for them to exist. So what Ahsoka has done here with this tech priest, I would say it's an anomaly. It's an anomaly. It's very unique, because I'm imagining if this was the battle sister Rajulia, if she was the one fighting with Ahsoka, do you guys actually think that she would, talk with Ahsoka? Do you think that she would allow herself to be captured? Never. With her, she would fight until the bitter end. She would even blow up her own, she would blow up her life. She would blow up everyone around her with an explosive, making sure she takes as many of them with her. She would do everything and anything to make sure that the target, that the enemy is defeated. But with this tech priest, he was different. He had his belief system in the motive force, and how he's supposed to conduct himself in terms of battle, not necessarily killing the person entirely, but also extracting their essence from them and using it for other purposes, all that kind of stuff. And he also believes in the same sort of force that the Jedi believe in. And where Ahsoka believes in trying to find peace, the motive force is all about, also preserving that energy, preserving that essence and stuff like that. So, they're kind of similar with their religious aspects. And yeah, she was just lucky to be fighting someone like him. Someone like him who would also, find it within himself to give a chance to his enemy to repent, to rethink up their lives and, join the path of the motive force. If it was someone like Rajulia or a commissar, no, there's going to be no chance of that. They were going to kill her, or they were going to die trying. There was going to be no surrender. So yeah, she was lucky that she was fighting against this tech priest. And what the tech priest also, or should I say C82, what he has understood about this galaxy, saying that, it's not the same like the Warhammer 40K galaxy, where the warp has become this extremely toxic environment that has spilled over into the materium world, where people are mutated, where there's always war, where there is this perpetual suffering of the populace due to the Chaos Guards and the corruption of the warp. In the Star Wars galaxy, it's not like that. Everything is calm, everything is relatively peaceful. The force or the warp is one with the Jedi, you know, they're not being used by it, or they are not the ones using it excessively. They are one with it. And, you know, he understands that now, that there's actually a chance for peace for them in this galaxy because of, you know, the experiments that they've been conducting on, you know, the dead Jedi they've been collecting, and also just observing the different humans and Xeno races in this galaxy, that things are different here. And yeah, that is all nice and good and well, you know. I'm just wondering, you know, how is this going to affect the leadership structure of the Battlefleet Zectec and the Crimson Razors, you know, with Chapter Master Orion and what was her name again? Rolla, Fleet Admiral Rolla. You know, how are they going to deal with this tech priest who is going to, you know, advise them and tell them, guys, we don't need to fight the way we've been fighting like in the Warhammer 40K galaxy. We don't need to do all of these violent acts in this galaxy because the warp is calm, you know, the people are not being possessed by demons, humanity here is different, so we don't need to be fighting against them. I'm just wondering how, you know, Chapter Master Orion and his leadership are going to take that from this tech priest, because now this tech priest is thinking differently. He wants to do things differently in this galaxy. He sees there's a chance to do things differently. And I'm just thinking about, you know, the power structures of the Imperium of Man, whether they will accept this new idea from this tech priest, or are they going to try and shut him down, you know? Yeah, I'm just wondering, you know, what's going to happen with the tech priest, with this tech priest in the future, with later episodes. But yeah, it was interesting. You know, we got to they got to understand each other. Let's say that, yes. They got to understand each other. They got to understand where they stand with various topics, various situations. And yeah, like I said, maybe I am bloodthirsty. Maybe I just want these guys to kill each other until there's nothing left. But I will try to have an open mind to what Ahsoka is trying to do here. I will try. Yeah, that's all I can say for now. I will try. Yeah. Okay, guys, I guess that's it with AFanWithTooMuchTime. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as AFanWithTooMuchTime's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And now let us continue with A Fan with Too Much Time.